Em nome da Confederação Europeia de Sindicatos, eu gostaria de dizer aqui uma palavrinha em português para agradecer à UGT, assim que o secretário-geral e amigo Carlos Silva por me ter convidado a comemorar o aniversário da UGT. C'est tout. Friends, I'd like to introduce the European Trade Union Confederation as the European Trade Union, because this designation immediately shows what we are, what we do, for whom we do it, and why we do it. What brings us together, from Finland to Portugal, from Hungary to Ireland, what brings us together, European Trade Union, is the defense of workers' rights, the defense of the European social model made of industrial relations, social protections, and good public services. What brings us together is the firm belief that in an ever more globalized world, European countries must build their future together. What brings us together is our will to oppose the ideology of neoliberalism and to influence decisions affecting us and future generations. Yes, historically, the ETUC has always been in favor of the European Union, but not just any European Union. We are indeed for another Europe, for a social Europe. But what does it mean? Social Europe is a Europe which is not just a free market. It is not David Cameron's Europe. It is not the Europe of the Troika. Social Europe is a Europe with common binding standards. In a social Europe, social protection, minimum wages, social dialogue, collective bargaining and social legislation are not obstacles for the economy or for competitiveness, but indeed quite the opposite. Because indeed good wages, decent jobs, social dialogue, collective bargaining, social legislation are essential to social progress. And social progress must be the aim of a good functioning economy. Friends, we got a taste of that Europe when we won the right to equality at work, especially equality between men and women, when we got legislation on health and safety, when we secured legislation making information and consultation of workers mandatory, when European Works Council were created, when an employment chapter was included in the treaties, and when we negotiated a legislative framework for part-time work, fixed-term contracts, and parental leave. But friends, that was before the neoliberal wave permeated every pore of society. This touch of social Europe came before casino capitalism plunged us into a serious economic situation from which the financial sector is about to safely emerge, whereas workers and ordinary people have had to shoulder most of the burden of the crisis. ETUC, the European Trade Union Confederation, stands for social justice, Making ordinary people suffer the consequences of the financial sector's folly is unjustifiable. And yet, this is the line adopted by EU heads of states and government supporting the policy of the Troika. For many EU leaders, the current crisis was a good excuse indeed to strengthen the power of the neoliberal ideology. President and friends, today our first priority for a social Europe is economic recovery. And for economic recovery, we need an economic recovery plan. This is the only way to boost growth and quality employment. We want to change the tide. We need to go from austerity to sustainable growth and decent jobs. Such a plan requires an innovative use of institutions. It requires a well-understood economic solidarity between European countries. And to achieve this, we need a long-term vision of what the EU should be. And that vision is desperately lacking. Our plan will be a European Union plan. It will encompass proposals on the table, like the proposal from our affiliate, the DGB, but also other proposals from the Nordic colleagues, from the Italian colleagues, from the Spanish colleagues. And we are confident that this plan will come about in the ETUC very soon. But such a plan can only work if Europe gives up its blind veneration of the 3% deficit. President and friends, yes, indeed, public finances must be sound and debt levels must be lowered. But blindly slashing expenditure and wages, as was imposed on the Greeks, the Spanish, the Portuguese, the Irish, is counterproductive. The best way to relaunch growth and to tackle the deficit and debt over a much longer period of time, this is the way we want to go. In December 2012, heads of state and government promised a roadmap for the social dimension of the euro area. And we got something during the last summit. We were waiting with anticipation for the communication of the Commission and for the reaction of the Council to it. It came very recently, and we were profoundly disappointed, I would say even angry, at the result of the last EU summit. We got words, but no real action on the social dimension of the economic and monetary union. We got empty words on social Europe, but strong words for deregulation. The social dimension runs the risk to be reduced to a scoreboard, to statistical information. But friends, the EU economic program, what is called the semester, must be reoriented. Increased poverty, increased inequalities are not acceptable. ETUC will be involved in the process, but you, the UGT in Portugal, must also be involved. We didn't win much, but we won this. The obligation to involve us, ETUC at European level, and you in Portugal, trade unions, in the elaboration of recommendations for national programs. We should play, as trade unions, our full part in this process. Friends, we are in heavy waters, in stormy weathers. We are in favor of another Europe, but how do we get to that other Europe? Which forces can get us there. The challenge in front of us is to change the European Union, not by destroying it, but by acting together for a new European Union model. We are under stress. We are under pressure at national and European level. But friends, as trade unions, we are used to living under tension and pressure. This is normal trade union life. This tension is part of the nature of a trade union. In Europe, as in Portugal, our role is to resist, to propose, to negotiate, using all means at our disposal. And resist, we did, and we do. The European Trade Union said no to the fiscal compact. We said no to President Barroso and Commissioner Olli Rehn, who are doing their utmost to restrict Europe to being a neoliberal area in which citizens are forced to compete for the least demanding social standards. We say no to the action of the Troika in program countries. We say no to those who believe that social progress goes against economic success and competitiveness. We say no to those who put the burden on the weakest in society. This is not social justice. ETUC says and will say no to all of that. We call for a new European social program, for a directive on restructuring, for a health and safety program. We call for a social progress protocol and for a European industrial policy. We call for the implementation of the youth guarantee. We are denied all this in the name of economic liberalism. We do not yet have the majority or alliances required to change that hopeless lack of social progress, but we will not stop denouncing this situation. Friends, we will go on saying that European integration is possible only if it generates social progress. But solely opposing the European Union would be counterproductive. In a globalized world, we need to cooperate closely and better to integrate our economies and social systems. Otherwise, workers, citizens, and future generations would definitely be on the losing side. The ETUC is not calling for the euro's disappearance and the rebuilding of national borders. Consequences for workers would be dramatic. We say yes to what is still the objective of the European Union: social progress, full employment. Let us not forget that this objective appears under the Article 3 of the current treaty. In less than a year, a new European Parliament will be elected. This election is important. If we want to see another Europe emerging, we need to mobilize workers ahead of this election. We need a European Parliament which supports our position. And last week, the ETUC adopted its platform in view of this election. We should all use this manifesto and encourage workers to vote for candidates friendly to our views. I am convinced that the UGT Portugal will work in that direction. To achieve that other Europe, the ETUC uses and will continue to use all means at its disposal: demonstrations, lobbying, campaigns, social networks and negotiations, naturally including alliances and cooperation with all progressive forces in society. And friends, we will continue to fight to bring workers and citizens' voices in all places, particularly places where decisions are made. This is what the ETUC did since its creation. This is what UGT Portugal did for the last 35 years. We are, you are, fully alive for future fights. Para terminar, desejo-vos uma boa continuação do vosso trabalho, boa sorte e força para o futuro, de forma a não abandonar o combate frente aos grandes desafios que o UGT terá pela sua frente. Mais uma vez, em nome da CES, coragem e força à UGT e a todos os trabalhadores portugueses. Obrigada.